Good morning. Good morning. It is Make It Happen Monday, and I'm coming to you live. And I forgot what I was going to say. I was trying to get my words right then. And actually, this is about overwhelm, isn't it? And talking about cycles of overwhelm. So those who haven't been to the show before, Make It Happen Monday is all about supporting you to achieve success without stress by sharing stories and strategies that inspire you to listen to and trust your own inner wisdom. And this week, as we are processing and coming to terms with the loss of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, I am sure I'm not alone when I say that I have experienced waves of emotion. Yesterday, I just binge watched everything I could about the royal family, sat watching documentaries, listening to the stories, and just felt incredibly sad and just was with it. But I want to talk about these waves of emotion and overwhelm today. And I have got a model to share with you if it feels appropriate. And it depends on who comes live and who says what and what you ask me. But I just want to talk a little bit about these cycles of overwhelm. Last week, we talked about emotion overwhelm. The week before that, we were talking about diary overwhelm. And today I want to talk about what happens when we have these cycles of overwhelm, when the pattern keeps repeating. It can often feel like, as clients said to me, if you get overwhelmed, it can feel like sort of a warm rush of warmth or emotion or energy runs through your body. But if you constantly are having that, there's no respite for it. Some people have said to me, it's been a bit like a tsunami. It's like it just knocks you off your feet. It's not a gentle wave. It's a battering. It's a beating. Some people have said that this beating feeling can really take the wind out of them. It's like they've been kicked in the stomach. And when you're having this sort of battering of overwhelm on a constant basis, it can often develop into metaphors that have been used to describe the experience for my clients is things like feeling like you're on a treadmill, like you're on a hamster wheel, there's no break, it's just constantly, battering away at yourself. And I'm sure right now, with this change that's going on, as in all grief, loss, or change, what happens is that our system often does not file things chronologically in the what's in the past, what's the present, what's going to be the future. And what can happen is all of our sort of thoughts, feelings, everything that's triggered comes sort of crashing in like this tsunami wave. And so for those of us, whether you're a royalist or not, the fact that we were just going to have a new prime minister and now we've got a king, that's new change. And so we're going to have to let go of things that are familiar, things that good morning, Lorna. We're going to have to let go of things that were familiar, things that we could rely on, things that we could depend on, because, things are going to be different. And these are people that we look to for leadership for the country. And if you then escalate that all the way down, mothers, grandmothers, some of us, I've lost my mum, lost grandparents, all of those things. We've had bereavement before, if we've experienced loss, this can often activate that emotion for that as well. So when I'm working with clients who are having what I call an overwhelm cycle, so it's like they've got this barrage of emotion, keep hitting them, and they either feel super charged with adrenaline and feel so busy they have to keep going and can't stop, and it's almost like they are running on adrenaline. It's like they're on that treadmill and they don't know where the pause button is, and they don't stop, because if they do stop, there's a sense that everything will fall apart. But equally, they can come to me overwhelmed, and they just feel down and lethargic and like they're exasperated and exhausted. They have no more energy left to give to anything. And ironically, both are impacts of overwhelm. And one is that we get busy doing as a distraction, and another one is we get busy withdrawing because the doing doesn't seem to help. And so when I work with clients, the first thing we do is really just pause. And so today, rather than getting into teaching, rather than showing you the models, I just want to invite you just to take a moment now and take a few deep breaths. Just bring yourself into this moment right now. And just notice whatever you're noticing. Perhaps notice whether there's any tension in your body. Notice what thoughts you might be having, what feelings. Just notice the narrative and the story that you're having with yourself right now. And when we've got this barrage of overwhelm, these cycles of overwhelm, what can happen is our system goes into fight, flight, or freeze. It feels attacked. It feels unsafe because it can no longer process the information. It can no longer make sense of it. It can no longer predict what's going to happen. And therefore, what can happen is we then lose the blood and oxygen from the neocortex part of the brain, goes out to our hands and feet, our extremities, so we can fight, flight, or freeze. And the irony is that is what stops us from being able to get ourselves out of the overwhelm cycle. And one of the reasons why talking to somebody like myself can be the thing that just slows it all down is just because some of what's going on is when we get caught up in all of that, we can no longer see and hear beyond the sort of fight, flight, or freeze survival state. We can't reflect back and we can't project forward, and we're in this state. And often the story we're telling ourselves is one of, I failed, I've got it wrong, or is that whole things are not okay. And when we have someone to talk to that can listen, just the fact that there's someone there that's bearing witness and not judging, not making assumptions, can instantly tell your system that part of the story is not true. You're not on your own. You are supported. And so that can be enough just to bring you back to the now, to start to regroup that oxygen from your hands and feet back to your brain, get that blood there. Now, in the absence of having someone to talk to, or with this thing, personally, what I do is I know for me, laying down or even standing up and then touching my toes, like to give my body physically, get the blood back to my head, can often really, really help me. So if we think about what we want to have happen is to get the blood and oxygen back to our heads. So going for a walk, doing some exercise, just stretching or just moving, taking some deep breaths, and or talking to yourself in a way that reassures your system that you are okay. And if you can't do that, that is when I say to you, it's really worth reaching out to somebody and talking to somebody. The challenge we often have is that our friends and family are often overwhelmed. They've got their own stuff going on, and maybe they don't listen in quite the way that we want, and they don't say quite what we need to say. But even if you can just talk to somebody, and even if they don't listen in the way, the fact that they were willing to listen and they were there, notice that you're not on your own. Notice that you've got those people there. But what can happen is if we think the people we care about the most, the people we normally talk to, we don't want to talk to them about this. It could be because maybe kind of examples and stories I've had before with clients are they're coming to, I don't understand why I'm so overwhelmed. I was doing really well, and I've suddenly had this, I feel like I've gone back a bit and I'm back to where I was before. And usually what's happened is something has changed in their support network. So maybe a good friend, one lady I remember talking to her, she said, I've just realized that the problem is that I had built a good network of people to talk to as a result of doing the course with you, Cheryl. But one of the ladies I talk to regularly has just been diagnosed with breast cancer. So I'm like, I don't want to vent to her about stuff that's going on at home. Another person was going through divorce. Another person she used to run with had had an ankle injury, so they weren't out running. And so just because she decided not to talk to this person about this thing, and she decided not to talk about that person, and this person wasn't coming out running, suddenly she had 3 less people that she was opening up to and talking to about what was happening for her. I've had other people, and a lady I talked about years ago who, her parents passed away and realized that actually they were the only people that she ever confided in. I know for me in 2017, when my husband had his heart attack, it was a bit of a light bulb moment. I realized that, when, I had to put all my attention, or I wanted to put all my attention on making sure he was okay and he got what his resource, I suddenly realized he was the only person in my life at the time who I actually ever said, I ever sort of griped about anything or got anything out of my system. And so I actually phoned a girlfriend and said, look, I'm really bad at doing this. I don't, I phone girlfriends, I just have a chat, we talk about toffee, nothing really. And I very rarely will vent about what's not working, because I used to think, oh, it's not very positive, I'm being a bit of a mood hoover, I don't want to bring them down. But forgetting that part of overwhelm is that we're experiencing emotions, and we haven't had the time to name them. We haven't had the time to acknowledge them. We are not even bearing witness to them. And so I had to literally learn how to phone somebody and say to them, I'm really feeling pants today, or this is not going well. And what helped me was to recognize that the purpose for talking was to expel, express, honor, and witness my emotional response in the moment. But to remind myself, it is an emotion. So it's energy, emotion, it's moving through me, and it's, as I express it, I'm letting it go. It is not who I am. So just because I feel terrified, or I feel sad, or I feel angry, or I feel resentful, or I feel frustrated, it isn't who I am. That is an emotion I'm experiencing in the moment. And by talking to somebody about how I'm feeling and expressing that in the moment, what I discovered is I was able to let it go, and I could get back to being the kind, generous, thoughtful, patient, tolerant person I wanted to be. And I've discovered actually I was being more than I realized. But because I'd spent so much time trying to suppress the other emotions, not bothering anybody with them, I never really got them out of my system. And so it didn't take too much of something else coming along before. It wasn't that I was getting a whole load of new stuff, really. It was just I'd never really expressed the other stuff. And so it was just the whole stuff was just being activated within my system constantly. And so I constantly felt like I was fighting this battle inside and out. And the irony is, and I know many of my clients have said the same thing to me, is that everybody saw me as a really happy, confident, positive person on the outside. But inside, I had all these negative thoughts, and I was angry, and I was sad, and I was frustrated. And I felt a fraud, because one of my core values is honesty. And I felt like I wasn't being honest with people, but I was in a bind, because I was like, if I tell them what I'm really thinking, then they might think less of me, they might not like me. And it turns out that people who get it, that realize we're human, they don't hold me to those thoughts and feelings. I also had to learn, which was a really tough thing, is that I was perhaps doing that for other people, that if they expressed anger, I was kind of like labeling them as an angry person rather than accepting that they had just had a moment of anger. And so that learning worked both ways. I became more compassionate and more understanding and more able to listen to people when they were experiencing emotions. And I was more able to do it myself. Now, I trained to listen to other people when I was as a professional listener, but where I was struggling was in my personal relationships. So I just want to share with you, particularly with everything that's going on with Her Majesty, I'm not going to do a Make Up Monday next Monday, because I know that I need and I want to spend that time to honor, to mourn, and just give my system time to transition through the change of the monarchy, the change of, that we're going to have, from woman to man. The whole thing is going to be changing. And in addition to that, we've got the political changes. And I know that when, and I'm going through quite a bit of change personally looking to restructure the business, looking to build in some gaps into the company so that I can take more breaks next year. There's lots of things going on for me personally. And whilst we've got this big thing going on, I want to be present. I want to be in the moment. And whenever I've got these videos, I have to think about what I'm going to say beforehand, and my mind is there. So if I don't have the video booked on Monday, I can just let that go. I can ditch that thinking and give myself space to be present for the funeral next week, which is what I would like to have happen. So in terms of overwhelm, when we're getting those experiences, one of the things I encourage you to do is just notice what you're thinking. Notice if you're saying anything about how you feel. If you can name the emotion, see if you can locate it. Is it inside or is it outside? Does it have a shape or size? Do you have a metaphor for it? That emotion is like what? And then allow yourself to be with that emotion for a moment and ask the emotion what it would like to have happen. And it will have different information to give each one of us. But mostly what I've known over the years is often our emotions simply want to be heard. And you might want to ask yourself, where does that emotion come from? Where does the sadness come from? Where does the anger come from? Where does the resentment, frustration, joy, love, whatever the emotion is, where does it come from? And when we can find the source of that emotion, then we can work out whether or not it's a story we're telling ourselves. Is this something that happened in the past? Now, when we talk about it in the present, the brain doesn't really know how to separate past from present. So learning to tell your story, your narrative, is that I was angry an hour ago and I'm happy now, or I was angry 10 years ago when this person did X, Y, and Z, or this situation happened, or that happened. And learning to tell your narrative and your story so that it's very clear to your brain that that is not who you are today, and it's not what's happening now, and you are safe and you are okay in this moment. But that is what happened to you in the past. Separating the narratives by really defining what is past tense language being used to describe it and present tense. If the narrative and the story you tell yourself is more about what could go wrong and what might not happen, again, separating that in the future, this could be this, but right here, right now, I am okay. Because the way that we talk to ourselves and about ourselves will often determine how resourced we are inside to manage what we hear and see outside. I hope this has been useful for you today. I was going to do like a tutorial thing, and I decided that I wanted to just trust my instincts and go with slowing things down, me talking a bit quieter. You might have got more of an experience how as a motivational speaker, I can get very animated. As a facilitator, I tend to quieten down and ask questions and help you to really listen to yourself. And I'm hoping that maybe this quieter, gentler version of Make It Happen Monday will be something that you'll start to notice some changes in your system. Hopefully the voice might be more soothing for your nervous system. However, you might be really, really annoyed by that calming voice. You might find it feels patronizing or too slow or whatever. And the invitation is for you to be curious about that and just notice what's happening for you in your system, and be curious about, what would you like to have happen? So if you were, what do you need to see and hear? And if you do want the more upbeat stuff, then please do check out my YouTube channel. Go to the playlist, Make It Happen Mondays, and you will find lots of jolly ones if you need to go back and get that more upbeat stuff, if the slower version isn't really for you today. But wherever you are with this change right now, whether it's change personally or with regards to Her Majesty's passing, I want to send out my support, and my vibes, and my hugs and my questions for you today, and to say that I'm here if you need to talk and you want someone to listen. So let's finish with our normal clean setup we do at the end. Let me just find the questions. No, it's not on that one. It's on this one. Is, given what I've been saying right now, what would you like to have happen? now that you've heard what you've heard, just noticing whatever's going on for you, we can get really focused on communicating what, how we don't like or what's not working or how we do feel. And that's really useful. But the purpose often, is so we can let it go and then make a decision about what we'd like to have happen next. Otherwise, we can get in a bit of a bind where we're just caught up talking about what doesn't work, what isn't right, what's not fair. And sometimes, especially with grief, we need to spend some time doing that. We need to give ourselves time to acknowledge it. Sometimes it'll take people years before they're ready to let go of the sadness and the hurt. And there is no right or wrong. It's just what's right for you. But right here, right now, with what you've heard me talk about today and the questions I've been asking, what would you like to have happen? And given that's what you'd like to have happen, how do you need to be? What kind of you is that you that can make that happen? And for you to be like that, what kind of resource or support might you need? And as always, please, if you have found today's video useful, please like it, share it, comment on it. If you haven't already, I'd really value people joining Step by Step Listening YouTube and subscribing, because I need to get to 100 in order to get a unique URL, and I'm at 93 so far. So any more subscribes to that channel, comments or likes is always appreciated. It gives me feedback that what I'm putting out there is useful, resourceful and supportive of you. So if we have no other questions, nobody else online has got any questions or comments today, I'm going to love you and leave you. Have an amazing week. Take care of yourself, be kind to yourself, and remember to also notice what's working about this change. Just notice and celebrate that you are okay and you are well in amongst all of this stuff that's going on, and reach out if you need support. Take care. Have a good week. She says, hovering to find the video outro.